when I turned 30, I had 13 surgeries from 30 to 34. And it's like, I'm trying to get these guys to understand, take care of the body now so you don't have to deal with it. Get your body worked on consistently, hopping in the cold, hopping in the sauna, you know, really rolling out everything. And when you look around the locker room, if you're the guy that's not doing it, you're behind, because everybody's buying into this at this point. Everybody is. Everybody's listening to Rogan. Everybody's watching the James Harrisons. And if you're not watching the James Harrisons and you were in Tampa and you saw Tom Brady, you're trying to emulate that.
AQ, you've been a Morozko customer for a couple of years now, and a lot of people would say, well, of course, he's a football guy, and all the football guys, you know, they do the whirlpools and they get the ice out in college. Everybody knows that in football you're going to do ice baths. But Morozko is a little bit different than the whirlpool that they have in the typical training room. So I wanted to ask you, what do you get out of the 33 degrees to 34 degrees?
Yeah, and that's the interesting. I think most people don't realize this, but you know, from the beginning of my playing time and from the beginning, I mean, you can probably go back into the 70s. I'm sure they were doing the same thing and hopping in little ice tubs. But look at the ice tubs that most football players hop in. It's the ones that just go to the waist. And that was strictly because, sure, your legs get torched during a two-a-day in the middle of summer, right? But how do we stop that lactic acid? That was the whole purpose of it. Is there still a purpose of that with the Morozko? Absolutely. But I'm using it for completely different things at this point, right? I'm using it for the dopamine effects. I'm using it, you know, first thing in the morning, the minute that I wake up, I'm in that thing trying to get a dopamine burst, an energy burst, a central nervous system burst, like all these different things. So now I can attack my day. And from that standpoint, I've noticed I get better lifts. I have better energy as a husband. I have better energy as a father. And then I do kind of the reverse psychology of that with the sauna at night, right? And I try and, you know, let's say it's an hour before bedtime, hit a 30-minute sauna, and then now my body's in a cooling effect. When do you sleep your best? When your body's cooling and it's in a cold state of mind. And so I've dove down these rabbit holes of the research, and I've gotten so many good effects. I love it. I love the fact that when, you know, I can hop in a 50-degree cold tub and sit there for 30 minutes and not even think twice about it. I'll be in Coronado next week, and I can go sit in the Pacific Ocean for an hour and a half when it's cold and not even think twice about it. But I think the fact, you know, that it is 33 degrees, 34 degrees is probably going to be the hardest thing I do on most days. And I think there's a piece of that from a mental standpoint, that especially when it's 6:15 in the morning and it's December and it's still dark outside, maybe it is 47 degrees in Phoenix, and you know, at that time, and you go hop in this thing that's super cold, I think there's a big benefit to doing something hard.
Do you ever get used to 34 degrees?
No, and you know, I think I will say this, I don't think you get used to it, but I do think your body adapts a little bit, right? Like, even if let's just say I take 2 weeks off and then I hop back in, right? Like, my toes get that burning, tingling effect, like when you get out, right? And I think the more and more you do it, you lose that. Like, I don't think you get that as much. Now, is it still hard? Does it still take your breath away every time? Absolutely. And I think that's a big portion of it, right? But so I do think you adapt, and the skin adapts. I guess that's probably the best way that I can maybe explain it, at least from my feeling, is that the skin adapts, but the mental is still every bit as hard every day.
You are just like everybody else. That is, sometimes people will try a cold plunge for the first time, and maybe it's 50 degrees and they're at some med spa or whatever it is, and they'll say, oh my gosh, they'll feel the activation. You know something is happening when you do a cold plunge. Mm-hmm. But after a week, your body's recruited brown fat, you've strengthened that smooth muscle tissue, you've got the vasoconstriction that conserves your heat. I'm now at a point where if it's not in the mid to low 30s, it's just boring.
Yeah.
39, no big deal.
It's a waste.
But the 33, when I look down and I see those, it's still like scares the crap out of me.
Oh, for sure.
I have that little voice inside my head that says, I could probably skip it or something, but that's the reason that I do it. Otherwise, I don't feel like I've started with a win. You know, I don't feel like I've overcome that what Rogan would call his inner bitch. Mm-hmm. And I want that challenge. Mm-hmm. When I come out, nothing bad can happen to me that day.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, I live for that too. And for me, it's no matter what comes at me that day, I feel like at 6:15 in the morning, I've already faced the hardest thing, right? And so, you know, when I walk inside and 3 kids are all crying at the same time, it's like, huh, all right, I can tune this out. And then I can go to this when the wife's yelling at me for doing this, that, yeah. I can tune that out too. I can just keep tuning things out no matter what comes. I feel like I did 6:15 in the morning. There's nothing that's going to beat me that day.
I have a similar feeling.
Yeah.
Have you ever gotten in with your wife?
Have not. She has done it. She's done it. I'm trying to get her to be my favorite word in all of the language, more consistent. Consistency, I feel like no matter what you do is probably the hardest thing, right? The hardest thing to stay on track. And she's done it, and I'm proud that she's done it a couple times, but it's getting her to be consistent with a lot of the stuff.
And are the kids curious about it?
They are. My oldest is awesome. So my oldest is 6, and I feel, and I never knew this because I was never a parent, obviously, before 6 years ago. But as this thing continues to evolve and grow, I think the greatest form of parenting is them watching you as an example, right? So like I've noticed so many times that when I have a gym in my backyard, so everything workout wise I do. When she sees me, she wants to come in and do pull-ups. When she sees me doing this, she wants to do it. If I'm hitting golf things, she wants to do that. And so every time I'm in the cold, she's always watching. She's always watching.
And has she gotten in with you?
Has not, but
Okay.
it will. It will.
Yeah.
I think she's definitely interested, and I think it'll happen.
It's okay for kids to get in.
Yeah.
You know, as long as they're doing it of their own free will. You know, they're curious about it, but they have plenty of brown fat. They're better prepared to thermoregulate than you and I are.
Sure.
And they know when they're cold. If you remember, because we both grew up in Pittsburgh,
Yep.
and I know I'm a little older than you, but there were some rough winters. Like in the late 70s, I made a lot of money shoveling those sidewalks.
Mm-hmm.
So Mom would say, oh, put on a hat, you know, wrap yourself up in that. And I remember when I was a kid, I'm not cold, Mom. And then somehow we grow up and we forget what it was like to be little, to feel like young again, except it comes back to me when I get into that Morozko, because the same voice that was talking to my mother, I'm not cold, well, I can use that voice when I'm in the ice bath. Wait a second, I'm having fun. I want to be with my friends. I got things I want to make some money shoveling. Whatever it is, there's a way to talk yourself out of doing the difficult thing.
It's easy to do that.
Yeah.
It's very easy to talk yourself out.
It's just cold. You know, there's a way to talk yourself into doing the difficult thing.
I have one sign in my gym. It's literally the only, if you listen to any of my NFL guys, they'll say that's the only quote I ever use. It's about 5 foot wide by about 2.5 feet tall, right in the center of my gym above the door. It just says, don't be a pussy. That's all it says. And I use that more than anything. And I ran a half marathon in January. A couple years after being 320 pounds and never running a mile in my life, my world was short sprints and quick recovery and do it again, right? And so never did anything from a long distance standpoint. I started with 1 mile, then it went to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6, 6 to 8. 8 to 10 was my longest training run, and then end up doing a half marathon. But I can't tell you how many times I'm on my Woodway treadmill in my gym, and my gym faces this way away from the sign, and I'd get to like 4 miles staring at a wall, and everything's telling me to get off that treadmill. And I just peek out the corner and I see in that mirror that reflection of that sign, and it was just like, keep going. So there's so much that goes into the mental side of everything that people don't realize. And if you tap into it, you can do anything.
It sounds like your daughter is getting a good introduction to the way that Dad challenges himself.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Tell me about what got you into ice baths. I'm thinking about a couple of years ago when you got your first Morozko and you said, this is something I need to do every day. You're not playing football. You don't have 2-a-days anymore. Why every day do you need an ice bath?
Yeah, so the big thing for me was I'm sitting there at 290, and when I decided to make that lifestyle change of I don't need to be 290 anymore. I don't need to be 300 pounds anymore. It was, how can I get this weight off in the healthiest way possible, and how can I really change all my habits, really, right? Like, and I was not an unhealthy 290. I was strong as an ox. I was well put together, just finished off a 12-year career playing football, so I was obviously in great shape, but like, you don't realize until you're 290 and then you dip to 250 how much that affects your body. My feet felt better, my knees felt better, everything felt better. So now I start diving into this longevity. How can I live as long as I possibly can for my family, right? And so I start listening to different people and different podcasts and seeing all of these benefits of cold exposure, of heat proteins, of eating a certain way, of, you know, less sugar, less processed foods, all this different things. And so I start diving down all these different rabbit holes, and I was like, all right, now's the time. And hard has never been something I've shied away from, and it's something that I like to embrace. And so from that standpoint, honestly, like the first thing I started doing before my carnivore diet, before the sauna, before everything was literally the sauna. And as soon as I saw Rogan's episode where he was on it, I was like, okay, if he's doing it, Morozko's got to be the best. I dove down that rabbit hole. Turns out it is, and you know, I've continued to roll with it.
You know, Joe was asking people about ice baths for probably 2 years before he got a Morozko. He had Wim Hof on there, he had Kevin Hart on there, and he seemed so skeptical. And then gradually comes around to the idea, well, maybe he should do it. Joe has done more for the health of America than all of the government institutions that are supposed to be in charge of the health of America. He woke a lot of people up to, you're in charge of your own health. And it's simple, but it's hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like it's all complicated to understand, but it's hard to do. And he was a great example to the country.
As it should be. And I mean, I think I've taken full advantage of it, and anybody that'll listen to me, like I'm not stopping talking about this.
Yeah.
Like, this is, I have gone this way, and I will continue to go this way.
So have you ever pre-cooled your workout? You made it seem like you do it in the morning.
I do.
What do you do right after to rewarm?
So for me, I do the sauna, and then I have this little Yeti portable chair, which, by the way, the little Yeti portable chairs are super comfortable. Put it right in the middle of my turf yard in the backyard, and I just go sit in it exactly like this, put my feet on the ground, sit here, face the sun, and I sit there for 10 minutes.
So you make some vitamin D.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
That's a good way to go.
Yeah.
Have you tried doing your ice bath before you do your workout to see whether you get a performance boost?
I have not. I've heard positive results on that, though.
So this is Craig Heller coming out of Stanford.
Okay.
He's done some great work. He was on the Huberman podcast. And he's just not working with like super trained athletes, but with graduate students. He'll say, okay, we're going to do some pull-ups, and he measures that. And then he pre-cools their pull-ups. They can do twice as many pull-ups. And the idea here is that fatigue is one of the mechanisms that your body uses to protect yourself. You probably know, I'm trying to imagine you out at Latrobe, you know, during training camp, preseason, and they gotta monitor the athletes for heat exhaustion. But you can overcome that fatigue when the willpower and the motivation is really strong to your own danger. Well, that's why you feel the fatigue, so that you will not injure your mitochondria and shut down your cardiovascular system. Fatigue is there to protect you. When you pre-cool, it shuts off the mechanisms that would fatigue you before you overheat, because you're not going to overheat. Now Heller has measured this big boost in peak muscle power output, big boost in endurance. Now, Joe says it's hard. Like, if you don't do the sauna beforehand, just like you're doing, if you get up early in the morning and you get in there, it's psychologically, it's more difficult. But he does some push-ups, some light exercise and that kind of thing, not for the performance boost, but because you also get a testosterone boost. So now I'm encouraging people, especially athletes, to try the pre-cooling and see if they get a similar boost. I don't have a lot. I've got one professional athlete who sent me his labs, and sure enough, he was way lower on his T than he expected. People think of professional athletes as strong and tough, and they are. But when you think about the grind of the season, the sleep disruption that you're getting, the way that when you're on the road especially, you can't always take care of yourself the way that you want. He realized, especially in the football season, you're going to hit your minimum testosterone levels in late January when you need that the most.
Yeah.
So all the football guys I talk to, I'm trying to talk them into pre-cooling. Will you give it a shot?
100%.
Pour it back to me.
You don't have to tell me anything to try that I will not try. I promise you I will try everything. I mean, you're telling me I can do double the amount of pull-ups. I'm in. I am in.
What do you tell the younger guys? Like, I know that they look up to you. They come to you and they say, AQ, how do I get a little bit better? What do you tell them about going from very good? Like, if you're D1, you already know you're very good, but the NFL requires great.
Yeah, listen, the biggest thing is this, right? And this is what I try and tell all my young guys. I mean, all the guys I'm training right now are years 1 through 5, where I can really make an impact. And for me, the biggest thing, if I could go back, like, if these guys start doing some of the stuff that I'm telling them to do in years 1 through 5, they're 4 or 5 years ahead of where I was, because it took me 7, 8 years for some of this literature to come out and some of this stuff to realize, right? And I mean, this stuff is all fairly new in the last 10 years or so. I mean, at least to the wide range of professional athlete, right? And so for me, I didn't care. I wish I would have had this early in my career. And so what I tell them is this, like, if you take care of your bodies tenfold in year 1 through 5, it'll be 10 times better in years 9, 10, 11, and 12 versus me, where everything was kind of almost broken down by year 8, and then I'm trying to repair everything for the next 4 years. And for me, like, when I turned 30, I had 13 surgeries from 30 to 34, and it's like, I'm trying to get these guys to understand, take care of the body now so you don't have to deal with it, so that your flexibility takes over and you can maybe save yourself on some crazy fluke thing that happens in year 8, or getting your body worked on consistently, hopping in the cold, hopping in the sauna, really rolling out everything. And this knees over toes guy I just came over his stuff in the last 2 years, and it was everything that you're told not to for years and years and years. It was when you squat, make sure your knees are behind your toes. And now everything he's showing is get it out over. And now you build all this knee health through here, and saves a lot of people. Or people were coming back from ACLs and now they feel better than they've ever felt. And so there's all this new stuff kind of coming out. And if you take advantage of this stuff as a young player, it'll only help you so much, because so many people neglect it. So many people do.
Okay, but what happens when this guy's 24, he's 25 or something, and you're saying it'll be so much easier for you in year 10. He's got every right to say, AQ, my career could be over in August. I might not make it to my 10th year, because training camp is coming up, and I've got to make an impression now. How do you respond to him?
I respond in the way that the guys that I grew up trying to emulate, who were older than me, the James Harrisons of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who spent $350,000 a year on his body. I'm well aware not everybody can afford that.
He made it back.
He made it back.
It was a good investment.
It's a great investment, great return on investment, right? And so the Tom Bradys, who obviously these guys have endless amounts of money, but if their careers were able to last 15, 20, 25 years because they took an interest in their body, if you're meant to be a 5-year player and you can steal 2 years because you took care of your body, I'm telling you, taking care of your body is going to only give you the best chance. It's only going to give you the best chance. And so, and when you look around the locker room, if you're the guy that's not doing it, you're behind, because everybody's buying into this at this point. Everybody is. Everybody's listening to Rogan. Everybody's watching the James Harrisons. And if you're not watching the James Harrisons and you were in Tampa and you saw Tom Brady, you're trying to emulate that, because those people, the 1% of the 1%, they bring everybody else along. And there's somebody like that on every team. And if you watch it and you follow it, you give yourself a chance.
There's another way to think about it, too. When we're talking about ice baths, anyway, did you think it was going to hurt? Did you think it was going to hold you back? Did you think it was going to make you slower or weaker?
Yeah.
Like, there are no adverse effects. There's 2 minutes. You can swear all you want. You can bitch at Professor Seager if you want. You can say, I'm never going to watch that YouTube video. Just give it a try.
Yeah.
Because when you come out and you feel like Superman, you're going to want to do it again.
Yeah, and you may not feel that the first day because you fought it.
Right.
Right?
And it's stuck in my head. The way that the football people are trained is everything is about being tough. There's no amount of pain that you can't take. But the way you got to do the ice bath is to relax.
You have to.
Let all that go into the water. Let the water take it out from you. And it's a more meditative approach. I don't care how tough you are, you cannot win against the ice bath. Wim Hof, he set a record, it was like an hour and a half or something like that. I'm not suggesting this for everybody. I'm saying, just like when you went in, you said, control your breathing, box breathe, 5 in, 5 out. Before you know it, you're done like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Do you encounter that with like when you're introducing the ice bath to the guys that you're training?
100%.
No kidding.
And more so, like I've watched women handle it much better than some of these guys, right? Like, for instance, my wife, right? Like, you tell her to do it, first time in it, she's, and it's like the worst experience. And it's like, slow it down, just think of something, breathe, just deep breath in, slow everything down. The beauty about most football players is they are very coachable, right? Very coachable. In order to be, especially at the NFL level, you have to be, because these coaches will not put up with it. Like if you're that guy, there's 15 guys that are trying out for an offensive line room to keep 10 or 9. If there's a better player that keeps disobeying what a coach may say, he's out. Like they'll keep the guy with less talent who's more coachable, right? And so when you sit there, and it's very similar to football, when you go out there at first, especially as a rookie, at least in my case, and I think most people would speak on this, the game is so fast. You're just not even aware of how fast it is. You come from being this elite college player and you think it's going to be the same speed, which it is the same speed in terms of people running, because it's the same guys you played against in college. Nobody's got like super fast in the last 2 years, right? But everybody anticipates things better. Everybody reacts a half a tick quicker. So by that sense, it seems a lot faster. Everything's reactionary faster. These guys are a half a tick better and reading everything than this guy, right? And so I just had my guy, right? And he's going into his third year thing. He's like, the game's slowing down, right? And I'm like, yeah, it does. And it continues to as you start to anticipate more, right?
It's slowing down.
Starting to slow down. But it's the same thing when you're teaching the cold plunge. It's the same thing. Like at first, the game's flying, right? When you first get in there, the thing's flying, right? And it's like, slow it down. When you slow it down, it becomes a much more enjoyable experience.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I got one more question for you.
Yeah.
You are one of the few people who has both done the Morozko kind of lying down on your back and done what we call the plunge, where you're in a more seated position, because we just came out with this, and it's the first plunge that actually makes its own ice. So a couple of people have told me that psychologically they feel a little bit different when they're seated. Like when they're lying back, they feel more vulnerable, but when they're seated, they feel more in control. How would you compare the two?
In my opinion, it's not even comparable, right? I think I will do this 100 out of 100 times with the laying down, and I will almost psych myself out every single time. The fact of whenever I get in there, there's something from a mental, psychological standpoint that just tells my brain it's easier. And I don't know what that is. I don't. Like, I can't sit there and pinpoint one particular thing. I think maybe the fact that, you have to like slowly sit into this one and then lay back, and then it's like, oh man, now I got to get up out of this thing. But for that, it's just like boom, in, out, right? And so ever since I've done a plunge portion before you guys even came out with, there's a group of guys, former UFC guys, former special military guys, and then like a couple former athletes. We all get together. There's a buddy of ours that kind of has this pretty cool basement set up. It's a padded wrestling room. It's a boxing thing. And then it's got a full tilt recovery room. He's got a sauna that's pretty awesome, built-in sauna. He's got a whole red light bed. He's got the thing where you can breathe in the O2, the live O2 stuff. He's got a PEMF, is that what it's called? PEMF thing. And then...
He's tricked out.
Tricked out. I mean, this thing is awesome. But he built this thing like 10 years ago and bought a copper plunge tub and had ozone filtration. Basically, like, everything is completely deconstructed, right? Like, it's not like one unit, but like he put his own ozone filtration. He's got a drain, so he drains the water, does this. He has the ice, he pours the ice and all that stuff. But it's a plunge pour. So that was the first time I've ever done the sit-in kind. And the minute that I did that, whenever I had this, I was like, oh, this is 10 times easier.
No kidding.
Mentally. Just mentally. And I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So whenever you guys came out with that, it was the first thing. As soon as I saw it, I was like,
you were one of the first people to order it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
we got it. There was a physician in Canada, and he asked for it. And so we're like, okay, yeah, we're going to work this out. And he only had so much space. So we sized it to be very compact. And then, I mean, you ordered it, a couple of other people ordered it, and we realized that you didn't really fit. So even though we originally designed it to be compact, we had to make it a little bit bigger, just so that you, like you say, you wouldn't have to screw up your knees or something, just so you could focus on relaxing while you're in there instead of your posture.
Because it's hard enough.
It's hard enough. Yeah.
When you're in there comfortably, right? But then when you're trying to scooch and fit and make it work, now it's a chore, right? And you don't want it to be a chore. You want this to be somewhat of an enjoyable experience as long as you can manage your breathing, right? And so this XL Plunge is ideal. Obviously, if you don't need it and you're not a super tall or big person, the regular one's perfect. But if you're the 6'6", 330-pound guard for the Chicago Bears, it is plenty big enough and perfect.
Well, the 49ers ordered 3 of them.
Let's go.
So they ought to be in good shape.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming by and testing it for
Thanks
us.
for having
It sounds like we got to get you set up with one.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Oh, man. Appreciate it.
Very much.
Thank you.